No, but HR.
HR.
So we
have experience with HR.
We have some not as great, but yeah, we had hiring authority.
I think Andrea watches some of our videos, so she might she might chime in.
Might
here.
Be a comment.
She was the HR leader.
Yeah.
When we were at one of our companies.
So you know.
We received some pretty good feedback from our last video that we did where we talked about if we were starting a coffee roasting business today, what advice would we give? And the feedback that we received was that we didn't talk about our partnership.
Right.
Which I think was an oversight on our part. So we wanted to take this episode and dedicate it to what's gone well with our partnership and the reasons why it has been successful for the last 2 years and even before that.
Yeah.
And why we decided to go into business together. Some of the features of our personalities that suit well to each other, and some of our experiences that helped bring us to the point we are today. So this episode we're going to dedicate to partnerships, choosing a good partner, and kind of what within our partnership works well, because we're not the same person by any stretch, and I think that's good.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that brings a lot of value to the table when you're talking about the type and level of collaboration that you really bring into these types of situations, especially with business, that allow you to really succeed. Like you want to have, you don't want two people that are the exact same, right?
Yeah.
You need someone that will complement your skills in a way that really brings out the best in your business. And I think that's what we've been able to do and really maximize with just our relationship and our previous experience that we bring to the table, and make sure we highlight and emphasize those skills based on what the business needs.
And I think it's important to note that we were able to trial run a partnership in the real world in corporate America for several years before moving into business. And so I'm not saying that we knew everything about what it was going to be like to work together full time. But we flushed out at least a large part of what that was going to look like.
I mean, So, I mean, and really just jumping into it from there, like, we worked together for like 8 years, I believe it was, before we actually went into business together. And
in a lot of that time in competing roles.
Yeah, I was going to say they were somewhat clashing in some respects, right? So even from there, understanding both working for the same company, at the end of the day it's about moving the business forward.
Right.
So even though we were on opposite sides of the ring, so to speak, we still understood that the expectation was the business moved forward. So we were there for a reason, there for a purpose, and even though we may not have agreed on everything, we still had to find a way to work together and make it work.
And you could appreciate the other person's dedication and drive to do their job the best they could, and like you said, push the business forward by trying to do the right thing.
Right.
And so I think that was a large part of what we saw in each other to say, okay, this person is in the best interest of the business, is trying to push it forward, and brings good ideas to the table and execution to the table and follows up on tasks and things like that. So
so I think the environment itself really helped us kind of be where we are today, right? I think that was the kind of the foundation of our corporate relationship that transitioned to our entrepreneurial endeavors that we're pursuing now. So
and I think it's also, we had similar reasons for wanting to move away from that corporate environment.
I agree.
So I mean, we had been in actually worked together, 2 different companies. And so we were able to see each other work in both of those. And in between the first and the second company, we had actually started talking about starting a business. And it wasn't quite right for both of us during that period. And so we were able to actually find work together again at a different company to spend the next 3 or 4 years. And I think during that transition and looking at entrepreneurial activities in the interim between those two, it helped us understand what we wanted for our careers going forward. So it's like some level of flexibility and autonomy in making decisions.
Just pursuing other interests. Like we both had passions outside of, the coffee business that we were both actively engaged in. And
we still do, right? We're not holding each other back. So like McKendrick's only interest is not coffee. He does other stuff outside, and even like it's like during work hours,
Yeah.
right? Whatever that means. He now has the flexibility to do that without me like, oh, where's McKendrick at?
Yeah.
Why isn't he at his desk doing
Yeah,
his job?
or who's he on the phone with now? Like,
Because,
we're
like,
talking about something non-coffee related.
That's
right?
that's the partnership aspect where I trust McKendrick understands what needs to happen, and that's where the maturity and the growth within our corporate life came in, where we understand that each person has the best interest of the business and
Right.
can do their job without being supervised or
Yeah, exactly.
So if McKendrick is on a call with his other responsibilities, I don't care. Like, it's
Yeah.
no big deal to me because I do the same thing. Like, I do some reptile stuff during work hours, and that, that's the way that we have it worked out. And thankfully, we respect each other and are able to disconnect from.
Yeah.
I'm working on coffee, so McKendrick has to be working on coffee
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the autonomy that we really wanted to create.
That was
that
was the whole point.
That flexibility is what you want in your business, right? You don't want to have or be so rigid that you can't do things that you need to do or want to do outside of, the business itself, right? So,
and we don't punch a clock. We don't check in on each. Like,
right.
If I'm running later than
whatever
I expect, I will text McKendrick just to make sure that he knows I didn't
like drive off a cliff or something.
Yeah. But that's not so that I'm making excuses to him. That's just so that he's aware of what's going on. It's
just a common courtesy. Yeah.
And he does the same for me. But it's not that we're holding each other to a schedule,
right?
Per se. So I think that's point number one, was that we came from the same experiences and we knew what we wanted in starting a business.
Yep.
Number two, though, is that even within those corporate environments, we both have held a lot of different roles that have been proved to be very beneficial when starting a business.
So, and like for me, I started out doing a lot of planning and scheduling, which ultimately became what I led. The teams that I led were like planning, scheduling, logistics, and supply chain teams. So that became something that was very much value add for this business. Understanding how to schedule, like even production lines, seeing what assembly lines look like, understanding, what efficiencies look like, bottlenecks look like, looking at some Six Sigma practices within the business. Like, these are things that I learned very early on in my career that I think add value now. Even doing stuff like Kaizen events, which is like the blitz events to like clean up or restructure or something that will help benefit or prove to be some type of efficiency improvement for a certain area. Like, all these things came in very handy for me, and I learned these, like I said, very early on in my career. And you, on the other side, was on the customer service side.
Yeah, for most of the time that we were together, I was on the customer service side.
Yep.
Which is where we kind of clash from a material.
Yeah.
So McKendrick's team would have been responsible to having product available.
Right. To meet
like the requirements that so customer service in manufacturing a lot of times isn't just call center type customer service or interacting with customers. It's also order management and demand planning. So we receive the orders, forecast future orders, and then manage the customer experience from order creation to ship fulfillment.
Right.
So I would rely on McKendrick's team to give updates on the planning part, so like when raw material was going to be made available.
Right.
And also scheduling part, so when the parts were going to be manufactured
produced,
on the
correct.
manufacturing line. And McKendrick's team would have been my team's primary point of contact. McKendrick's team was then working with
your
operations
team.
And my team,
right,
kind of as the go-between, to make sure that the customer in the end gets the updates that they need, correct, and the parts get out on time.
And that that's the part that you and your team own, right? Like, right, you own that relationship. So for us, it was important to understand what those commitments were.
Yeah.
Whether we liked them or not really didn't matter at the time, to be honest, right? Yeah. But from a high level, we understood what the goals were. We understood that Trey and his team were responsible for making these commitments to the customers, maintaining healthy relationships, and we had to make sure that everything lined up in a way that was able to produce the outcome desired to meet that customer need.
And
right?
so you can see how that could become conflicting.
Very conflicting. Because I'm like, what are you committing to?
Right,
and why?
We would have a set of guidelines of customer order management where customers had the expectation that they were going to receive product within a certain period of time.
Right.
And a lot of that was based on domestic regions and where those customers were located. And a lot of our manufacturing customers operated just in time. So they didn't want to house material for extended periods of time.
Right.
And so therefore they wanted their product we ship business to business. So they were using our products to manufacture their products. And so they didn't want to hold inventory. They wanted the product at their docks just in time to be able to manufacture their products. Whereas McKendrick is working on a global supply chain, trying to get product from overseas to fulfill our manufacturer requirements. And so you can see how those don't really jive if you don't have very, very, very good forecasting.
Yeah. And that was a big key to the success of the business, is really just trying to work on, the efficiency that gets built in by like volume production, right? So one thing that would always be a conflict would be, the one-offs versus trying to maintain efficiency. Like, oh yeah, a customer may want one or two of these, but to run one or two and then change over to run something else loses time, loses efficiency. So you think about that in today's environment, it's like we want to run a bulk run of something and keep going.
Like with our coffee.
Coffee, yep. So
we want to run our cycle on the roaster is 12 batches.
Right.
Bags. So we want to run 12 bags to optimize our production. We don't want to run 6 and have to store some or have to scrap some or whatever.
And even running, like when you're running volume, like if you want to run a certain, dark Honduran dark, right? It's easy to just keep running.
I can pull that bag out and set it in place
and just keep going.
Keep going.
And then as soon as you have to change,
I have to change my profiles. I have to do all kinds of stuff.
So all those things come into play when you're talking about just how you set up your processes.
And so back to that point, I think we actually have a pretty good understanding of operations, even though neither one of us worked in operations, because both of us tied in so closely to operational output, right?
Correct.
And so we got a lot of the secondhand information, and we pushed a lot of improvements into the operation team.
Yep.
Because we were the ones that were driving for that output. And so I also have engineering background, so I worked with some of the engineering teams earlier in my career, as well as actually the inventory control team, which McKendrick eventually led.
Yep.
He wasn't there at the time when I worked in that department, but I had moved into the customer service leader role when he came in to that supply chain.
Yeah, so that's another piece that's like value add now, like understanding inventory, your inventory turns, cycle counting, min and max. Like these are all things that we were exposed to in the manufacturing environment that, again, we brought that directly from there and the skills that we had into this business.
And it's honestly it's refreshing, and I'm so glad that we had that experience, because it's so easy going from whatever $100,000 shipments a day or more, right? Millions of dollars of goods shipped out a day and inventory management on that, to moving into this where you have, we still do fair amount of volume, but the volume is nowhere near what we're talking about.
Yeah,
in
you're talking
120,000 square foot facility,
versus a 1,250, right?
The inventory turns are not, the inventory product turns are not nearly as high. So it's nice because we have a foundation and we can keep up with it really, really well, as opposed to, I think, some other small businesses who don't manage it as well with that same level of experience.
So that's good, though. We talked about engineering piece, the inventory piece,
customer service, supply chain, operations.
Yep.
The only thing that we're missing.
Oh no, but HR.
HR.
So we
have experience with HR.
Some not as great, but remember, we had hiring authority.
I think Andrea watches some of our videos, so she might chime in.
Might
here.
be a comment.
She was the HR leader.
Yeah.
When we were at one of our companies.
So, you don't always make the best decision. You go based on what you have. You hire people. Sometimes you got to fire people, unfortunately.
So we've had some experience.
We've had some experience with HR as well.
Yeah.
So we
would not say that we're experts on HR.
No, not at all. Not at all. But
our track record will show.
Yeah. There's a few out there that are like,
you sure?
What did you think was going to happen there? But
the one that the one that I think has been the stiffest learning curve for us coming into running our own business has been the accounting piece.
Yeah, the financial piece.
Because there's such a big disconnect, and rightfully so, from in a large corporate environment, people that are working in finance and accounting aren't really talking the nuances. They'll give the big picture, like sales numbers,
which is where we played. Like right. we had responsibility. Like we're not like complete, novices.
I understand.
Yeah, like we understand.
And I understand P&Ls.
Like, and we had to do some explanations when things weren't aligned. Like when you were in the red for whatever category, there's research that had to be done. But by no stretch of the imagination do I have the experience within accounting or the financial, universe to say.
And a lot of it was learned specific to our roles and to our industry and to our business, right? So, I knew the classifications for my expenses because they were the only ones that were on my spreadsheet that I could select, right?
But now, you need to know it all.
Yeah. So
so
that's been the biggest gap. So that's one of the few that I was when I was thinking about this. Accounting was the only one that I could think of that I hadn't really touched at all.
Yeah. I mean, we've
dealt with, I worked with the accounting department and the finance department. Oh, yeah. But they would never have let me touch their spreadsheets,
Right. Everything's on, it's locked. Can't get into
it. You get a PDF. I get a PDF, not an editable Excel
Or you need a password to get in it, Like, you don't trust me? Guess not. Rightfully so, though.
They would occasionally ask me questions, and I would have to make up something.
Yeah.
To look smart.
Finance is definitely that gap. I mean, we're learning. We're figuring it out, making it work.
We have accountant.
We do.
We don't try and do everything. We ask questions. Yeah. But before we get into trouble and the IRS comes knocking next week, we have an accountant. We talk to the accountant. But
it keeps us safe.
That is the one gap where our experiences didn't overlap.
Yeah.
And then the last point, and we're going to keep it short this time, is I think it's really important, as I mentioned when we started the episode, that we're not the exact same people. We have different strengths and we have different weaknesses, and we can leverage both of those to make sure that the business runs the best it can, and we are fulfilled in our work because we get to do what makes us happy and what our strengths are. And we don't really have to focus on overcoming our weaknesses because, as it is, your strengths are some of my weaknesses, and my strengths are some of your weaknesses.
And I think that's, even when we were talking about HR and how we were, building teams, a lot of times that's what we do. Focus on the strengths. I get it. You do these SWOT analysis to figure out where your weaknesses are, which is good to know where they are, but the reality is I'm hiring you because of the strengths that you have to do a certain job.
Right.
And for us, we bring certain strengths to this business that I think that have allowed us to really be successful and see the success that we've had over the last, 2 years now, right?
So my strengths, I am more of a visionary type. I get the big picture ideas and I have a really gifted mind in that I picture things really well. And so I can envision finished things before they've even started. And so that's one of my biggest strengths. I'm also, with my customer service background, I'm very good under pressure and in pressure situations, and have the ability to talk myself out of a lot of situations when dealing with very difficult customers. And so that's, I think, probably one of the reasons why I advanced so quickly in my career, is that was a strength that I had that a lot of other people don't have, in that I can calm a customer down in a very stressful situation, whereas they came in ready to guns blazing, right?
Right.
But one of the things that I don't do particularly well are the get it done pieces.
Right, and this is where, I would say my strengths come into play, right? So for me, those are the things that And I think there are some of that overlaps.
For sure.
When you're like when there's something that needs to be done like in the moment, I know I can depend on Trey to get it done.
I'm gonna do it.
No, let's figure it out right now. And we do that often. Like whenever there's something that we know we need to do or figure it out. Okay, right now. Let's talk through it, figure it out, make a decision, go. Yeah. Like, we're not gonna let things just sit and fester or whatnot. We're gonna come to a decision and get it done. So that's one of those things that for me, I definitely am, really good at. I'm pretty connected in the community just because of the things that I've been doing outside of corporate America, in corporate America, going to networking events, talking to families, groups, things of that nature. I'd say are the things that help me, and it helps with our delivery business, being able to talk to people, connect with folks. I run into people all the time, say, hey, I know you from somewhere, which a lot of times I don't know where it may be from, just because I have multiple circles that I'm in all the time. So,
and I think you have the charismatic style to, like, you have the more, not salesy style, but you can make people feel important when they may not necessarily have the same, like, you may be trying to sell to them, but you spin it
in a completely different way.
Whereas my good at talking to people is more getting myself out of trouble.
Right.
Yours is more making them feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
And so, I think neither one of us are like deficient. Like neither one of us are being dragged along.
No.
But we have shifted our focus into playing to our strengths more. So like I do more of the strategic like vision. Like I'm the one that's always reading the books and trying to come up with new ideas and do all these things and new product launches and all that stuff. And McKendrick's out there nose to the ground, grinding, selling,
getting stuff
done. So,
and you need both.
Absolutely.
Need both. Like if you can't have someone being a visionary without something or someone like ready to execute.
I would never get anything done.
Yeah, you just have
I would just have a whole bunch of great ideas. And so I think that's the great thing is to like, I'm thankful to have a partner in the business because I would have to put myself in situations where I wasn't very strong. Comfortable. And so luckily I have someone that can do that and can pick up that slack and vice versa.
Right.
So,
yep. Which is why we are where we are. We got projects in the pipeline that we've been actively working on, like all these things that sometimes I have to tell Trey to, all right, hold on.
Yep.
We got enough projects in the pipeline.
Because then we have someone executing, right?
That's right.
We have somebody out there executing.
That's right. So wanted to share those with you. I think, these are things that have really made us work well together. Very good complementary skills that have allowed us to really thrive in this space.
Yeah. And I think that's something that you can take away if you're considering starting a business where you can either decide to go solo. That's okay. There's a lot of solo entrepreneurs out there. But also if you're looking for a business partner, take some of these points and look for some of those different aspects within that person.
Yep. And I think that'll go a long way, in my opinion. Yeah. You just don't want someone who thinks exactly like you do. Because you
don't want a yes person either. Like,
you don't
want someone to say yes because we say no to each other all the time. We say, I don't know if that's a great idea.
I don't think that's a good one. Yeah,
but we also support when we make a decision. We both support it, right?
So
okay, so that's Cold Blooded Caffeine podcast. I don't remember what episode we're on. I lost track.
We're like dozens and dozens in.
Whatever. This is Trey. That's McKendrick, and we're out.
Cold Blooded Caffeine out.